Hi there, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's October 25th. Today we celebrate the Frenchman who designed the very first secateurs, or pruners, and the Italian orphan who grew up to discover the corpse flower. We'll learn about the Dutch botanist who was trying to figure out what was going on with his tobacco plants and made a significant discovery for science. We'll hear the autumn garden poem that highlights the crimson of the sumac for the pageant of passing days. And we'll grow that garden library with a cookbook called Flowers in the Kitchen by Susan Belsinger. I'll talk about gathering up your empty containers and pots, as well as protecting your ironwork in the garden. And then we'll travel back in time to 1875 to hear some thoughts about autumn work in the garden. But first, let's catch up on a few recent events. Earlier this month, on October 10th, the world celebrated World Mental Health Day. There was a lovely article featured in Thrive, an organization using gardening to change lives. Quote, as a charity focused on promoting the health benefits of gardening, Thrive knows how time spent in gardens and nature can bring significant mental health benefits. They see and hear how it helps people cope when times are tough. They said they see how gardening reduces stress and anxiety, and how the process of nurturing plants gives fragile people a sense of achievement, which in turn builds self-confidence, self-esteem, quality of life, and ultimately hope. Most gardeners often joke that gardening is cheaper than therapy. But the truth is that gardening is therapeutic. Connecting with nature is restorative. Monty Don, the Gardener's World presenter, says this about gardening. However you come at it, whoever prescribes it or gets you to do it, gardening heals. Thrive shared the comments of young people that they work with in the garden. These kids were 12 to 16 years old with severe psychological and psychiatric disorders like bulimia and anorexia. They worked in the garden and reported, gardening takes my mind off things. I feel happier and less anxious. It has helped me be more sociable and to be able to distract myself when I feel bad. This is why at the Daily Gardener, I make a point of giving you ideas and ways to keep connecting with nature all year long, even through the winter. It's why I end the show every day with, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. So there you go. The best reason to garden, staying physically healthy and mentally healthy as well. And if you see or know of someone struggling, please tell them about the surprising benefits of gardening. All right, here's a friendly reminder to keep visiting your farmers markets and local farmers that set up those stands by the side of the road. They still have plenty of excellent produce to buy. Think pears, apples, things you can store like winter squash and pumpkin, Brussels sprouts, broccoli, parsnips, beets, and sweet potatoes. And if you feel so inclined, bring along an extra hot chocolate or coffee for the sellers. I know they always appreciate that this time of year. And who knows, you just might make a new friend. Now, if you'd like to check out any of the articles that I curate for you or any of my tips and reminders, you're in luck because I share all of it with the listener community in the free Facebook group, the Daily Gardener Community. So there's no need to take notes or track down links. Just head on over to the group the next time you're in Facebook. Just search for the Daily Gardener Community and request to join. Here's today's brevities. Today is the birthday of Count Bertrand de Mollevill, who was born on this day 275 years ago in 1744. During the French Revolution, Mollevill escaped to England, where he developed the secateurs, or the pruner. He created them to help with pruning grapevines, something he was all too familiar with back home in France. Before the secateurs, a knife or small machete was the primary tool used to prune grapevines and fruit trees. That said, by 1840, there was actually a riot over the use of secateurs in a small French town. When the town agricultural committee met to decide whether the secateurs should replace the pruning knife in the vineyards, over 300 farm workers showed up and marched in the streets to protest the decision. The workers felt that the humble secateurs would replace the need for so many vine dressers. Ah, technology. And it was on this day in 1843 that the New England farmer shared a simple update to the nation. It said this: Wisconsin, it is said, will have for sale this year 1 million bushels of wheat. That was back in 1843. And today is the anniversary of the death of Eduardo Beccari, who died on this day in 1920. After growing up an orphan, Beccari managed to get an education in his native Italy, and he eventually traveled to England to study at Kew. Beccari was friends with Hooker and Darwin, but he also befriended James Brooke, which meant he was able to spend 3 years exploring Borneo. During his lifetime, Beccari traveled all over India, Malaysia, and New Zealand, but it was on a little voyage that he took to central Sumatra in Indonesia in 1878 that Beccari discovered the plant with which he will forever be associated, the Amorphophallus titanum, or the Titan arum, the largest flower in the world. 7 years later, in 1885, the first Titan arum specimen bloomed at Kew, and when it happened, it created a sensation. Today, the Titan arum bloom still draws thousands of visitors. People love to take a selfie in front of the giant blooming plant. The flower is commonly referred to as the corpse flower, as it smells like rotting flesh. In a fascinating article recently, scent scientists identified the compounds that make up that terrible smell. The odor includes aspects of cheese sweat, rotting fish, decomposing meat, and garlic, among even worse items that I won't mention here. And it takes the corpse flower a decade before it can bloom. The putrid smell is meant to attract beetles and other insects to move pollen between blooming plants so that it can reproduce. Incredibly, the plants only bloom for 24 to 36 hours before collapsing. Between that first bloom back at Kew in 1885 and the year 2000, fewer than 50 Titan arum blooms had been recorded. But in the year 2016, Suddenly, dozens of corpse flowers around the world bloomed within weeks of each other. Horticulturists are still attempting to discern the reason for the clustered bloom event. And during this week in 1990, the Longview newspaper shared a cautionary article about the upcoming flu season. Buried in the story was this reminder. 100 years ago, a Dutch botanist discovered a disease-carrying microorganism smaller than bacteria and called it a virus, the Latin word for poison. The unnamed botanist referred to was Martinus Beijerinck, who was searching for the reason tobacco plants were dying. In his research, Beijerinck ground up some diseased tobacco leaves, and then he pressed the juices through a bacteria filter. He was utterly shocked when the filtered bacteria-free liquid still spread the disease. After reviewing his experiment, Beijerinck concluded that a contagious living fluid was the culprit, and he called it a virus. Today, two of the most common viruses are the flu and the common cold, and they're not very fun. And today is the 8th anniversary of the death of the botanist Bernard Verdcourt, who died on this day in 2011. For over 60 years, Bernard Verdcourt was known as BV to his colleagues at Kew. Verdcourt specialized in East African flora, and he had an unrivaled knowledge of around 4,000 species. He was also an expert on snails and slugs, so kind of a unique combination of interests. Verdcourt's passion for snails was a hobby he happily cultivated. Somehow he found time to publish work on mollusks, in addition to the 1,000 articles he wrote about botany. He wrote all of his 1,220 papers and books by hand. And rumor has it that the Kew typing pool felt that BV had the second worst handwriting at Kew. BV didn't shy away from controversy. He enjoyed bringing adversaries together to watch them work through their issues. He couldn't abide fools or sports. He could be cantankerous, but he was also very kind and helpful to young botanists. In Unearthed Words, here's a poem called Autumn Song from the one-time Poet Laureate of Canada, Bliss Cameron. Shall we not grow with the asters, never reluctant nor sad, not counting the cost of being, living to dare and be glad? Shall we not lift with the crickets a chorus of ready cheer, braving the frost of oblivion, quick to be happy here? The deep red cones of the sumac and the woodbine's crimson sprays have bannered the common roadside for the pageant of passing days. These are the oracles nature fills with her holy breath, giving them glory of color, transcending the shadow of death. Now it's time to grow that garden library with today's book, Flowers in the Kitchen by Susan Belsinger. As Susan reminds us in the intro to her cookbook, petals or whole blossoms of many common garden flowers add color, flavor, and drama to simple recipes. Susan incorporates 50 different flowers into her recipes in this book, from borage and fennel flowers to marigolds and pineapple sage flowers. And each flower is introduced with a photo, followed by growing hints and instructions for preparing them for the recipe that follows. This book came out in 1990. You can get used copies using the Amazon link in today's show notes for under $2, which is just unbelievable. Or you can get a new copy for $34, your choice. In any case, this book intrigued me so much that I went back and looked at what newspapers were saying about it back in 1990. And when they featured Susan's book, they gave us an idea of some of her go-to recipes, like golden corn muffin with calendula petals, herbed cucumber dip with borage blossoms. Apparently the borage echoes the taste of the cucumber, berries with sweet woodruff, dandelion mushrooms, which I thought the kids would like, nasturtiums stuffed with albacore tuna, nasturtiums with guacamole, and my favorite, a simple marigold rice, which I think sounds perfect for the holidays. Here's today's garden chore. Today's a great day to gather up your collections in the garden. Look for empty containers, pots, and garden ornaments. There are a few things that I use outside to keep my extra pots and garden items looking great. Second, for my ironwork, all of that will get one last shot of clear coat, ideally before winter sets in. And this year it sounds like the cold is really coming early, just in time for Halloween. Lastly, consider bringing a few items indoors to enjoy during the winter season. Now, some of my favorite pieces are things that weren't necessarily the star of the show outside, but they transform into something wonderfully grounding when you bring them indoors. Think of old cracked containers or items with patina. I love to pair an older, smaller container with one of the robin's nests that survived over the summer. They all come inside and add a touch of something natural and rustic, which is quite lovely when it's layered in with the more refined decor of a home. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. We're going to travel back in time about 144 years and read William Taylor's thoughts on autumn work that he shared in the Nottinghamshire Guardian Post on this day in 1875. He wrote, "What a relief to the flower gardener to bid farewell to the summer of 1875. The work has been quite double that of ordinary seasons. Weeds and grass have grown as they've never grew before, while the more tender plants and beds have scarcely grown at all. Now and then we had a gleam of sunshine to cheer and encourage us to make another effort. And again, as soon as we began to get a little tidy, came a thunderstorm or a hurricane, thwarting all our attempts at neatness. Gardeners, however, never give up for such trifles, and it's not until October that we acknowledge ourselves beaten. The trees are now putting on their autumnal tints. Elms and tulip trees are being arrayed in the brightest of gold. Leaves of every hue are playing about in the gentle breeze as they fall to rustle beneath our feet. What a mistake to run after every leaf with a barrow and besom as it falls. What a waste of time and want of taste. Gather them up certainly before they begin to decay on the walks and discolor them. But employers, please remember that October is a month in which trimness is impossible out of doors. And there's another reason for not insisting on too much trimness in October. It's a month in which the professional gardener has 2 seasons at once. In one respect, his new year begins somewhere about Michaelmas, the same time as the Russian violet commences flowering. Forcing has to be prepared for in earnest, planting pushed forward with all possible speed, evergreens first, and fruit trees immediately afterwards. Pruning also has to be finished with the modern gardener before Christmas. Currants are already fit for the secateurs. Gooseberries will shortly be, then plums, morellos, and peaches. The secateurs, or French pruning shears, is a very handy little instrument. Its total length is about 9 inches, and its weight half a pound. It can be gripped with the whole hand, and consequently does not tire the operator like the ordinary shears. It cuts clean as a knife, and by its aid, the pruner can do his work much faster than with a knife. No one who has used it for one season will go without it till a better instrument is invented, which will probably be some time. But enough of this. Autumn is here, bright and breezy autumn. I give you a hearty welcome. You shut out of sight forever our dismal wintry summer. You release me from floricultural millinery and put an end for a time to my polychromatic disappointments. I go to enjoy my vacation with a spade and a pruning hook, for the most perfect rest is a change of occupation. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up, and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.